Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Looked like the Saints got a whole bunch of dudes back at practice on Thursday. So let's run through it, man. For those that haven't seen the list, who was back that's certainly of note?
All of them? No, I'm kidding.
It looked like it, right?
Well, Michael Thomas wasn't back, and he's the one, obviously, that we're most excited to find out when he's going to come back. But and sounds like that'll still be a work in progress. And even when we do see him back on the practice field, he won't be playing the first week he begins practicing. So that feels more like a second half of the season type of wish. But almost everybody else was back today. I mean, both Teron Armstead and Eric McCoy on the offensive line, Tre'Quan Smith at wide receiver, Marcus Davenport, Kawan Alexander on the defense, Will Lutz back kicking. Who else? We had Nick Van Nett for the first time all season, Ken Crawley for the first time all season, Chase Hansen for the first time since week one. I mean, it really is remarkable how many guys this team has been missing.
And yet here they are at 3-2. And Mike, I mean, they were blown lead in the fourth quarter away against the Giants for being 4-1. So when do we suspect we'll know if these players are going to play on Monday?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, we only get to see a small portion of practice. We watch them stretch, and then we watch them do some individual drills. And when the injury report comes out, it tells you if they did team drills. But every one of those guys that I listed was actually participating while we were out there. They didn't just stretch and then, return to the training room. So I think that's a really good sign in their first practice back. I would almost expect every one of them to play until I hear otherwise, to be honest with you. Teron Armstead's the one who I think might need a little ramping up because his injury occurred later and seemed to be a fairly significant one. So maybe I'd be the least optimistic on him, but I think there's a really good chance that all of them will be back. And if it's not this week, it's going to be soon. And then don't forget David Onyemata comes back next week, too, from a suspension. And we know he'll be back next week.
Mike, specific to this game against Seattle, which of the players we mentioned there is most significant in this matchup?
Well, I know it bores the crap out of everybody who's watching the Saints this year because I have a Twitter account, but they're going to spend a whole year trying to win at both lines of scrimmage. They will make no apologies if they win games 20-10 all season long. And if they get Teron Armstead and Teron Armstead and Eric McCoy back on the offensive line, and Marcus Davenport and David Onyemata back on the defensive line, they're just going to try to win every game like they beat Green Bay. They'll take 15-play drives. They'll take time of possession wins, and they're perfectly content to do that. So, the offensive line has been playing well without Armstead and McCoy, but those are two Pro Bowlers, So that's huge. And then the defense, the one thing they haven't done well is rush the passer. And so I think getting Marcus Davenport and David Onyemata back on the defensive line will help with that in addition to the things they've done well on defense.
Yeah, Mike Triplett's with us on Twitter at Mike Triplett. I also noticed Taysom Hill and Deonte Harris were not there.
That's true. I should say that, yeah. The new injuries that occurred in their last game against Washington, those guys were not back yet. So neither one was placed on injured reserve, although technically they don't have to be until Saturday if they were going to be. But, yeah, I think it would have been even better to see them back. The fact that they had all that time off and weren't back today, I think that makes me skeptical that they'll be back this week.
So what does that mean for New Orleans in Seattle if they're without Hill and or Deonte Harris?
Well, getting Tre'Quan Smith back would help, minimize the loss of Deonte Harris. And, I think he could kind of fit naturally into that role. Chris Hogan wasn't there either, but Kenny Stills has sort of been taking on his role. So I think their passing offense would look pretty similar to what their passing offense has looked like so far, which is a little too thin, but, trade out Deonte Harris for Tre'Quan Smith. Actually, Deonte Harris has almost been their most important pass catcher on third down, while Marquez Callaway has been more of the big play guy, ironically enough.
Mike, we also saw the Saints make a move to bring in Lamar Miller at running back. Is Lamar Miller going to play in this game and have a role in this game?
Well, I think they just put him on the practice squad.
Okay.
And now I'm trying to remember Diviner Zigbo is on the practice squad or got moved up to the active roster. So it's possible. I mean, they just needed depth there either way, though. I don't think if they moved Lamar Miller up after he just signed with the team this week and just had his first practice with this team, no matter who is playing that backup running back role, it's going to be a very minor role until Tony Jones Jr. comes back healthy or until they work someone more heavily into the offense. It's going to continue to be the Alvin Kamara show.
Yeah. Do you worry about that at all, Mike? The touches that his touches are too high?
Absolutely. Look, other running backs do it. The Saints have always just not believed in it. I've spent years comparing Christian McCaffrey's numbers to Alvin Kamara and saying, if Christian McCaffrey was in New Orleans and if Alvin Kamara was in Carolina, I think they would just flip-flop their numbers. I really think that's true. Christian McCaffrey, before he started dealing with injuries, was play 95% of the snaps. Saquon Barkley in New York was a play 95% of the snaps. Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. And the Saints just haven't done that with Alvin Kamara. So that doesn't mean he can't do it. He's held up pretty well so far doing it this year. He just had the bye week to get fresh legs. But, look, we saw him wear down 2 years ago after he was used heavily early in the season, and he wasn't the same again for the last 3 months of the season. It's now a 17-game season, plus ideally playoffs. I don't think they want to give him 25-plus touches every week, but until they get Michael Thomas and Tre'Quan Smith and all their offense back healthy and Tony Jones Jr., they almost have no choice but to feed him. He's their whole offense right now.
The narrative with Sean Payton coming off the bye has been that they've been awesome.
Yeah.
Can you give some context? Does that still play? I know for several years, they were unstoppable coming off the bye ever since he went the whole Andy Reid route, just letting guys go away. Yeah. Does that still play?
Well, every rule is made to be broken. My son, who is 10 years old, finally caught football fever a couple years ago and finally went to his first Saints game ever. And it was coming off the bye when the 8-1 Saints hosted the 1-8 Falcons. They played maybe their worst game in the history.
Yep.
They did not score a touchdown for the first time in the history of the Sean Payton Drew Brees Saints. So every rule is made to be broken. But I'll tell you one thing they are really good at. And Rod Walker of the Advocate, I'll credit him. He's been putting this number out there and asking guys about it. He went with the next 4 weeks after the bye. He said over the last 5 years, they're 18-2. And I know over the years, we've had a lot of good October and November numbers on the Saints. So I think everybody knows that this team, for whatever reason, has sometimes been a slow starter. But all these years where they finished with 12, 13 wins, it's come by stockpiling them in the middle of the year. They have been a fantastic October and November team. And I think more than ever, a lot of times, takes a while to find your rhythm, takes a while to find your identity. Obviously, that's true with this team. Now, I don't know that all these guys showing up in practice mean watch them steamroll Seattle on Monday night. That's a tough place to go play even without Russell Wilson there. I would not be surprised at all if they don't play their cleanest game yet on Monday night. But I do think, we're eventually going to see this team not be the yo-yo team that they've been. I expect them to win 4 out of 5 at some point. I really do.
Man, it'd be brilliant if they could start it this week, Mike. And I'm with you on Seattle being a tough place to play. But would you argue that this is a game that you almost, especially because you're catching the break of them not having Russ, this is one you got to get?
Well, yes and no. If you could tell me they can win one of the next 2 because they then are going to get home at Tuesday at noon from that trip. And, oh, by the way, you're hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 5 days later. If you could tell me they're not going to go 0-2, I think that's something they would like to avoid. I would forgive them in a window or in a tunnel. I would forgive them for losing a Monday night game in Seattle, even with banged up Seattle. They almost beat Pittsburgh last week in their first game without Russell Wilson. It came down to the wire. But the matchup, I do like the matchup. We know the Saints have a great run defense, And I think the game plan is pretty obvious against Seattle. You're not allowed to run against us. So is Geno Smith going to beat us or isn't he? And I think that's going to be their game plan. And again, Saints fans might be screaming, you got to let Jameis Winston cook, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Saints attempt 22 passes and try to have the ball for 37 minutes and run 30 times and try to hold Seattle to 50 rushing yards. And, and that feels like it's going to be the formula to win this one, too.
Are the Saints going to wear their sweet color rush uniforms? They did that in Seattle a couple of years ago.
I saw somebody list when all the color rush uniforms are coming, and I can't remember for sure. I do think that might be possible. But I think we get them 3 times this year. The color rush uniform, I'm with the crowd on that one. I love them.
Mike, I'm completely biased in saying that it's the best uniform in the NFL, but it's certainly a top 5 uniform in the NFL. Like, it's in that conversation.
It is. I don't know why it's so sharp. I completely agree with you, though.
Well, it's the accents. It's the accents on the shoulder and the stripe on the pant leg, and it's the old gold, which is such a rare color to see. The problem is they need to match the old gold jersey with the helmet. And when the NFL finally gets rid of that stupid rule where you can't have more than one helmet, maybe we can see like an old gold helmet to match the color rush gold, and they would just stick with that. Like, this should be the Saints' permanent uniform.
No, I agree. And they've actually started switching to that all-white, which is not quite as good as the color rush.
It's not.
But they're gravitating toward it. They like the clean colors. I will say this, though. Now, I don't know if you have time for a whole segment on fashion, but
I do.
I did not know I was neon green guy. But I'm on board with everything Seattle's done over the last 5-10 years. It's like they're playing. It's like they're playing chess while everyone else is still playing checkers.
Reminds
me of Oregon football a little bit.
My follow-up, Mike, was going to be that you can't lose to a team that looks like a highlighter. It's a rule. I mean, in college you can because it's college.
Okay, maybe they don't look like the better football team, but they look like they're having more fun than the other 31 teams.
I don't know, man. You got to be professional here, man. That's just. And you know what? Here's the problem with Seattle. Has Seattle ever had a good look? I don't think they've ever had a good look in Seattle. I mean, even back to the Steve Largent days, they just never have done well.
You know what?
They've just never done well.
I think this might be where me and you just aren't on the same page.
Wow.
I'm a metallic blue, metallic green, metallic gray. I'm all right with that color scheme.
Oh, this is so disappointing. Oh.
I know.
Sorry. If you
can have like burgundy and yellow or something if you want that. I'll take blue and green and silver.
You mean like football team?
Like Washington football team.
That's
yeah.
what I mean.
That's the one I don't care for very much.
It's tough. Look, it's really tough when you have no logo anymore. You know, like
good point.
You're just your colors and a number on the helmet. So anyway, Mike, thank you as always for the time. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.